So welcome to the Creative Disciplines tutorial, where together we will both explore what it means to have a creative mindset, how we go from conceiving an idea to creating something tangible, and the thought processes that we must go through to successfully birth that idea in the real world. The reason I think that it's important to have a creative discipline is because being creative and productive is an essential part of being human. In both heart, mind, and soul, we are creative beings that have natural talents to create products, services, arts, and innovate the world that we live in. Expressing creativity in all of its forms is what elicits passion, enthusiasm, joy, and the love of life. Not only that, being creative allows us to live more and give more. With a creative mind, there is never a dull moment. All wealth begins from the spark of a creative mind. If we are to create a lifestyle of wealth, and by that I mean a wealth of relationships, wealth of purpose, wealth of health, finances, and a wealth of experiences, then we need to start getting creative in how we perceive reality, creative in what we can do so that we as individuals can reimagine the reality that we want to live, so that we can start to create a life as we would prefer it to be. And that takes a creative mind, because a creative mind is what breaks through the limitations of a conservative, habituated, and one-dimensional mind. With the creative mind, we are able to first idealize what we desire, then scrutinize what we desire, and then realize our desires before we invest time, energy, and resources to actualize them in tangible form. Through the process of envisaging, brainstorming, and validating our ambitions, we can then devise plans to manifest them. With this precognition and pre-planning of what we truly desire, we are then less likely to commit to something that is most likely to end with failure, which is the loss of time, energy, and resources. So what is the creative mind? The creative mind is a trifecta of three archetypal traits known as the dreamer, the critic, and the realist. So these are three different types of mindsets that I have characterized into archetypal traits. The dreamer is the imagination element of who you are that is connected to your deeper intelligence and enlightens you with previews of desires which are aligned with your true nature. The critic is the analysis element of who you are that questions the variable facts and factors of what you imagine. And the realist is the quantifiable and decisive element of who you are that validates the pragmatic legs of what you desire. And both the dreamer, the critic, and the realist are the three different mindsets that work together, kind of like the three amigos, if you will, to assist you in developing a super creative mind that will get you more of what you desire, more of the time, and with less risk of failure involved. So I've put together three different profiles for these archetypes, which you can download in PDF format. But right now, together, we're going to go through each of those three different profiles. Let's begin with the dreamer. Who is the dreamer? Well, in short, the dreamer is your unfiltered imagination that aligns with your true nature. The dreamer has the superpower of unlimited imagination and lives by the motto, dream wild, my friend, or risk living lame. So the dreamer is the part of you that yearns to live its most idealistic, prosperous, and utopian version of reality. The dreamer's ideal reality is spiritually rewarding and resourcefully abundant, where you are being the most expansive and celebrated version of self. So, when are you dreaming? Well, the dreamer is present within you when you have left the three-dimension reality and shifted into five-dimension consciousness to access the universal intelligence of all that ever was, is, and will be. Where you have left the mundane realm of earthly constraints and problems and you have entered into a trance-like dream state to envisage the imagery of a far superior reality. So whenever you are daydreaming and lost in the vivid image of something delightful that you yearn for, that you need, that you feel inspired to have, you are being the dreamer. However, there is a fine line between dreaming and fantasizing. Let's distinguish the difference between those two. The dreamer is a mind portal that connects you to the original source of creation to imagine that which deeply resonates with the heart and soul. People, however, are often deceived by the fantasies that raptures with the lustful desires of superficial and materialistic ideals, which are mistakenly considered as my dreams. Genuine dreams, however, are the expression of truest and highest potential that comes from within. Fantasies are the idealization of that which is without to pine after societal and materialistic ideals. Buying into a dream that really is a mistaken fantasy is why people find it an uphill battle to make their dreams come true. And there are many examples of those who've achieved what they thought would be their wildest dreams come true, and yet they feel miserable and discontent inside because what they've manifested is a fantasy that correlates with a fake identity. They have manifested exterior wealth without feeding the heart and soul. But there are also many people out there that have no dreams or that don't live out the fantasy. They're just simply plodding through life, living this grey and dull version of life. That's because without the dreamer, we lack true vision, hope, and enthusiasm. Without a genuine and worthy dream to grasp onto and live for, we are likely to become demoralized and pained by the mundane repetitions of a meaningless reality. If the dreamer's power of imagination goes undeveloped, there is no medium in which to envisage a future worth striving for. Without a vision aligned with true nature, we are unknowing of who we truly are and what to do. It is those without a dream that are likely to work for other people's dreams. Those without a dream will get lost in a world of dreams out there. So let's dig into why the dreamer is a beneficial asset for you. The dreamer is the universal key that experiences transcendent states of imaginative consciousness. Within the metaphysical time portals of universal consciousness, we access the Akashic records to indulge in the tapestry of universal knowledge, and we engage with future timelines that are aligned with our true nature. That's because genuine dreams are the purest expression of spiritual principle and the guiding previews of one's future. You see, it is during the transcendental dream state experience that we embody the energetic source code of the future timelines that we envisage. We get to preview the future and then superpose its imagery and intuition onto the soul. We overlay the dream onto our psychoneurological fabric. From dreaming of something that we hold dear to the heart, we are inflamed with its inspiration and passion, which is experienced as this unmistakable knowingness of this is who I am, this is why I am here, and this is what I'm here to do. And thus, when superimposed with the future blueprint of what we dream, we are prepared to fashion its tangible equivalent. But we must dream, we must take time out from the busyness of life, time out from the distractions to get into a dream state. In fact, previewing the future is how talented geniuses make the unseen seen. In the dream state, they are free from the imperfections and boundaries of conventional reality and liberated from the conditions of the self-identity. Talented geniuses step into the dreamer's creative imagination, and they use the mind's eye to work unconstrained within the unlimited realms of consciousness. Then they craft the imagined creation into a 3D form in the tangible world, using the man-made tools of expression. But expression out there first comes from the impression in here. And you have the dreamer, you have the talented creative genius within you that is waiting for you to connect with it once you start to indulge with the dreamer's creative imagination. You can develop the dreamer by practicing transcendental imagination, and once you start to envisage a future that inspires your true nature, you will unleash the creative genius within you. You'll begin to find the habits of distractions and pleasures an unwise and mundane place to spend your time, because you instead prefer to spend more time within the dream state to refine your vision of the future. Even so, and that said, the dreamer's Achilles' heel is to imagine a reality with no account for the resources, the responsibilities, the time and actions that are required to fulfill its tangible part in the real world. And thus, the dream without a detailed and actualized plan is dead on arrival. In other words, it is of no use having this dream of an ideal life, adventures, relationships, and whatever else it is that you dream of if you don't know how to manifest it, if you don't put the work in to make it happen. Henceforth, it is essential that you collaborate the dreamer with the critic and the realist archetypes. So now let's discuss the critic archetype. Who is the critic? The critic is the ardent evaluator of creative ideas. The superpower is critical analysis, and the critic's motto is, until I prove it, I'm not buying it. So the critic is a part of you that has a keen interest to prove ideas right and disprove ideas that are wrong. This part of you revels in a sense of security and validation that it gets from the inquiry and assessment of that which it feels is important to you. So when are you being critical? The critic is the critical analysis process. You are being critical when you verify the quality, value, facts, credibility, authenticity, and the potential of something, someone, or somehow. The critical mind is curious, inquisitive, and skeptical as it closely examines and questions the merits of that which it desires to know more about. That said, The critic is not to be confused with the inner critic. The critic is a mindset that uses analysis to assess the merits of something, whereas the inner critic is a subjective bias that finds flaws and inadequacies in one's own character. And let's face it, everybody is good at being the inner critic. Unfortunately, the inner critic is a shadow part of the self that stems from unresolved childhood insecurities, where the underlying need to be right and accepted has morphed into this dark and unforgiving propensity to harshly criticize and condemn one's own behavior for not being good enough. The inner critic is the type of thinking that perpetuates self-doubt, which is projected as uncertainty and loss of confidence in the ability to perform, which makes it impossible to fully commit to situations. As within, so without, the inner critic's damning judgments over self then express as fault-finding in others, and thus this causes relational frictions and animosity. The inner critic is a gateway to the defeatist. So to briefly summarize, the inner critic is a trait that will sabotage your progress, whereas the critic is a trait that will help you to make progress. So what exactly is beneficial about being the critic? The critic is a powerful evaluator of the objective facts. The critic is a disciplinary trait that is able to suspend the desires of your personal bias and assess the objective facts of reality without your personal viewpoints and emotions clouding that assessment. Through the eyes of the critic, the facts of a matter have not been skewed with your personal values and beliefs. Being objectively critical is super essential within a subjective world that is awash with misinformation, errors, untruths, deceitful agendas, ulterior motives, and fake people. Critical thinking is needed when you are approached by those who proclaim expertise, exercise authority, and offer solution-based services so that you can properly ascertain the credibility of the claims that are being professed. The critic archetype will guide you to reveal the undisclosed agendas of those who want power, control, and profitable gain at the cost of your best interests. Because if we just accept what we are told without critical thinking, we are prone to misinformation and subsequently forming erroneous beliefs. Erroneous beliefs lead to poor judgment and negative consequences. Therefore, in order to clarify the facts of any given situation or information, the critic is a trait that will reserve immediate allegiance in preference to investigate something before accepting something. This approach of investigation before acceptance includes being vigilant with close friends, family, and work colleagues. A savant with due diligence and sound judgment, the critic is keen to observe, inquire, question, assess, rationalize, and qualify reality to discern the facts from the fiction. The critic is looking to disprove or prove of the why, the what, the when, and the how of reality as it presents itself. Rather than just nod the head and go along with reality, the critic within you is looking to expose any limitations, errors, and deceptions. The critic within you wants to validate the claims and merits of things to ensure that you invest your time and resources wisely. Or Not at all. The critic archetype is curious to know more about life and yet remains politely disagreeable with and unaccepting of the people, situations, or events that cannot demonstrate sense, rationale, truthfulness, and integrity. The critic is your spotlight that is good at detecting the unknown and the unsavory. And turning that spotlight within, the critic feels comfortable with exploring personal weaknesses and incompetency with the intention to establish where beneficial improvements can be made. Unlike the harsh inner critic, the divine attributes of the critic makes this part of you accepting and forgiving and willing to improve upon your shortfalls, where being analytically honest with yourself will emerge with positive solutions as to where self-improvements can be made. The critic is great at unveiling parts of oneself that are delusional, inauthentic, and erroneous, which makes this higher self trait the ideal candidate to expose the deceptive and superficial natures of the trickster and the exhibitionist archetypes. The critic also has equalizer powers, knowing that life is not a bed of roses and that within every blossoming idea there is a prickly thorn of disappointment. The critic is looking for the downside in the upside. This part of you wants to know what is unideal about the ideal, what is problematic about the solution. It wants to know why your dreams, your ideas, your ambitions might not work. The critic is the part of you that will peer into the negative aspect of life and help you to reveal any lopsided fantasies that you have that could lead to a painful disaster. The thinking assets of the critic is how we validate the merits of the dreamer's imagination. What we idealize needs a thorough investigation to validate its plausibility and authenticity to ensure that we have not mistakenly bought into a fantasy thinking that it's a dream. With the critic as part of your mental repertoire, you won't form delusional perspectives, nor will you rush into circumstances like the ill-advised, uneducated, or impulsive fool. The critic part of you will question the quality and validity of what you think and dream about to see where you are lacking, poor, or underprepared in your judgment. The critic will take you on the investigative journey within and without to broaden your knowledge base, increase your self-awareness, and sharpen that noggin. Playing the role of the critic will help you to avoid more negative consequences and achieve more positive results, thus instilling you with the ever-increasing power of self-assurance. But of course, what use is a creative mind that can imagine what it wants and critically analyze that imagination, and yet does not know how to make that creative impulse tangible in the real world? And for that, you would need to embrace the archetypal role of being the realist. So who is the realist? The realist is a down-to-earth, reality-based thinker with the superpower of certified realization. And the realist lives by the motto, plan for the best and prepare for the worst. So with the realist archetype, we are eager to know the implications and finer details of how dreams, of how abstract concepts that have been idealized and analyzed can realistically work within the tangible reality before we make that final decision to go ahead, go after what we truly desire from life. That's because it's one thing to think of something and know about something, but an entirely different thing to make it work in the real world. We need to know how to take creative imagination and analysis and distill it down into a workable plan and procedure that actually works in the real world. So when are you being realistic? Well, the realist archetype is the sensible and rational part of your mind that takes a reserved approach towards the pragmatic side of your desires. The realist will assess environmental factors and variables, then decide what is actually possible in accordance with the terms of your current circumstances and your capabilities. Because obviously, you can only do the best that you can, starting with who you are, what you've got, and where you are. But here's the thing. Being realistic is to stare at the ugly truths of reality. And reality can be ugly because there is no shortage of things to be fearful and worried about. And there are many examples of people who've endured hardship, failure, and loss when trying to make their dreams come true in the real world. When confronted with the truths of reality, there is a precipice, this tipping point between having immense determination for something and being totally discouraged. It is usually when dealing with the obstacles, the problems, the unexpected, the deviations, and the wrong turns that we all encounter out there that we start to take a pessimistic view of things, which is an imbalanced view of reality. On the other hand, we are just as likely to turn a blind eye to the truths of reality and instead ride out into the sunset on the back of delusional fantasies of how good things will be without accounting for the downside, which then makes it highly likely that we will experience the inevitable pitfalls and setbacks from unforeseen situations. So what is the beneficial asset of being the realist archetype? Let's start by saying that in the creative process, we've dreamed the dream with the dreamer. The critic part of us has then interrogated the dream to validate its integrity. And now we need to switch the cap to become the realist and take a third party viewpoint to assess whether or not the dream that we have idealized and analyzed does have practical legs in the real world. The realist archetype is the final stage of the creative process. With the insights gained from the dreamer and the critic, the realist is then able to assess the tangible workability of the dream and ascertain the requirements and probabilities of success before making a final decision to proceed or not with the thing that you desire from life. This final assessment of the realist is to qualify and quantify the resources and investments that are needed to make your dreams materialize. You will need to know what is realistically possible within your sphere of life, your sphere of influence, your sphere of reach, your sphere of capability. You will need to get realistic when determining if you have the appropriate knowledge, skills, energy, time, resources, strengths, and conviction to see your dreams through to completion. The realist part of you will define the terms and conditions of what you are prepared to tolerate and overcome, including what sacrifices you are prepared to make to realize your ambitions. Taking a profound reality check, the realist knows that there will be claims to stake, compromises to make, pivots to take, and many failures as you progress forward. That's because actual manifestation is a process of expression and then elimination, which means We first express something in its tangible form, then we eliminate what is not right, not working, not paying, not reaching, not enough, until that creative expression has been refined. And that takes time, error, and realizing where we've gone wrong and made mistakes, and to know where we need to make corrections. Furthermore, you need to account for the possibility that your actions, your creative and productive endeavors, could lead to major complications. The realist part of you needs to be honest with your ability to cope with the potential hardships and upsets that come with the creative process, and your recovery potential, your capacity to admit defeat and cut your losses. Deciphering the pros and cons and exhausting all avenues and alternatives, the realist is a trait that will conclude the most promising strategies available to you. The realist will be the adjudicator that proves beyond reasonable doubt what is achievable in the real world, and therefore this mindset will be your fail-safe measure. And with this final part of the creative process, with being realistic about what you can and cannot manifest in the real world, you will either gain the clarity to proceed with absolute conviction and confidence, or you will gain the information to adjust your ambitions, or you will gain the sound judgment to ditch your plans altogether and then start again with a different dream. And that last one is the hardest. It is hard to have this dream that you've imagined for quite some time and then come to the sharp realization that either it's not right for you at this time and for whatever reason, and thus you must let go of that dream. But please rest assured, it is far easier to let go of an impractical dream than to be stuck trying to salvage a huge investment that's gone badly wrong. Besides, by virtue of taking your dreams through the creative process, you will distinguish between dreams that reflect your true nature and those which are just superficial desires. And the dreams that are proven unworthy in the face of scrutiny and realism will dissipate back to where they came from. So with this advice in mind, do not be hesitant to discard ideas and start again. When you do have a dream that aligns with your true nature, your dream will have deep roots, and the realist within you will not be deterred in finding a way forward. So there you have it, the 3 archetypal profiles, the 3 characteristic traits and different mindsets, the creative disciplines of the dreamer, the critic, and the realist, which I know from personal experience are essential disciplines to have if you are to engage with the full power of your mind, which is a tool for creative, analytical, and realistic imagination. If you adopt these archetypal traits, you will develop a razor-sharp mind and distinctive awareness that not only opens up your mind to greater possibilities, but also shows you how to process what's going on in here so that it can be manifested out there in the most effective and efficient way. And so now I have finished this tutorial. You may want to go back over the information, and I recommend that you do until you are 100% clear on why the creative disciplines would be an essential asset to your life. Then make a start on the next tutorial where you will learn about 3 divine disciplines known as the progressive disciplines.